All right. Well, we're going to try this. As of me going live, the stream looks to be working. I am having some pretty significant issues with the stream quality. So if you guys can't hear me, let me know. Yeah, my stream quality is really suffering right now. But hopefully you guys can hear me. I will repeat myself as many times as I need to. Welcome, first of all, to the tonight's chat. Let me see if I can fix something real quick. One sec here. All right. Bear with me. Can you guys hear me fine? Let me know if there are any audio or video issues on your guys' end. For whatever reason, I'll explain a little bit of my tech issues. And then I'm going to go like this. And then I'm going to go like this. And last thing I do before we get started, boom, now you guys can see yourself. Perfect. All right. Well, if everything's working, welcome to Echo Wirm Live. This is a bi-weekly live stream. We try to do every other Thursday or Friday. Things have changed a little bit, of course. You guys who have been a part of the channel for a while know that I have moved. This is my new studio. You guys have seen it from another angle before. I have a fish tank over there, but now you see all of my bookshelves behind me. There's 4 of them filled with books and actually overflowing to the point where I have stuff on the floor. Everything is working on your end. Very weird, because on my end it says the signal is really, really struggling. So I'll explain a little bit about what's happened in my day today, and then we can talk about your guys' day and things like that. My laptop started on fire today in my lap as I was recording something. So that was really fun. So long story short, my laptop that I usually do everything on is in the shop. Everything for the most part is backed up with the exception of like images and little details in OBS Studio. So if something were to happen where long term I lose my laptop, I still have everything backed up. But like I said, my OBS is different. Yeah, it was an adventure. So anyways, I lost my laptop. I did end up purchasing a desktop Mac, which I had been planning to do for Christmas. Obviously pushed it back a little early. So yeah, that was my day. I'm hoping that it doesn't get in the way of recording anything. That's why I did buy this new computer, so that I could keep everything on track. But that was my day. How's your day? If you guys are new here or are just visiting, one thing that I always ask, if it's something you're comfortable sharing, is just where in the world you guys are listening in from, what time zone you're listening in from. I'm kind of a geography nerd, and I love knowing where my viewership is coming from. But yeah, it's been a very, very weird day. But looking in the chat here, see if I missed anything. I did want to mention, if you guys are wondering what happened to the full audiobooks, it's a very long story. I've explained it multiple times, and I won't be explaining it too many times more. But everything is still available for free on Patreon and Vimeo. You can check out the links in our channel description. But yeah, you can check it out. Pacific Northwest, Canada, 10:40 p.m. Crazy thing is that almost happened to me today. It was exciting. I was just working on something, and all of a sudden smoke started coming up from my lap, and I realized my laptop had a flame flickering. Has something to do with the display bands. When you open a laptop, the display cables are coming through kind of the hinge of it, and one of them short-circuited and started on fire today. That was a lot of fun. Watching from Arizona, Mountain Standard Time. Arizona is not mountains. I mean, they are now, but yeah, my dad lives down in Arizona, so how am I doing today? Not bad, actually. Can you guys hear me fine? I hope I have my mic. I had to change my mic settings because this is a whole new OBS program for me. So if things sound different, let me know. But yeah, things were going really well until like I said, my laptop started on fire. So that was a lot of fun. Still in Oklahoma. That's too bad. I don't even know who you guys play this weekend, but feel free to, if you guys have questions, like I said, you're more than welcome to ask things about me or say things about yourself and that sort of thing. But this is one of those live chats. We go through just stuff that we're covering on the channel, things that are coming up, the way things are going with the channel, and the schedule for releases coming up. I'll update you on that because things have changed fairly significantly with the move, but then the release of Court of the Dead, which just came out on Tuesday. We'll talk about that a little bit. And then just any questions you guys have about any of the stuff that we cover on the channel. I'm more than happy to talk about my own personal writings. I, of course, have Eric Schwabington, as well as the Radiation Effect. Radiation Effect Chapter 2 is out now, if you guys want to check it out. That is for the second book. And this week I've been working on both Chapter 3 of the second book, as well as Chapter 4 of Eric Schwabington. So a little update on just the way that the channel is going in terms of content. Obviously, we're still doing 2 daily chapters. Right now, over for free, we are working on Brysinger, which is book 3 of the Inheritance Cycle, or the Aragon books, as well as we just finished book 1 of Magnus Chase. We're now on book 2. We're about a month and a half in advance of that for paying members over on Patreon. That is $5 a month or more if that's something you're willing to join and have the capability of joining. We are still on book 2 of Magnus Chase. There's a lot of chapters in Magnus Chase, and we are also working our way through the Scorch Trials, which is the second book in the Maze Runner series. The Maze Runner series is up through book 1 over on Echo Worm Maze Runner, if you want to go check that out. As well as, in addition to those daily chapters, we're doing 2 chapters a day of the Court of the Dead. That is book 2 of the Nico D'Angelo books. Of course, the first one is called The Sun and the Star. It's sitting somewhere behind me right here. Oh, you guys can't see it. That's off screen. A couple years ago, they did a Nico D'Angelo book, Rick Riordan and Mark Oshiro, and they call it The Sun and the Star. The second book just came out on Tuesday. We are through chapter 8 for paying members on Patreon. We are through chapter 4 over on the regular channel. It's 1 chapter a day on the channel. It is 2 chapters a day over on Patreon. Looking through the chat here. Do apologize for the awkward silence. I could have gathered the family around it and made some s'mores. Well, thank goodness my son wasn't home because he probably would have wanted to touch it. Australian Virus says, love your voiceover of books. You should branch out into acting if you have the time. I wish I did have the time. That would be a lot of fun for me. I've worked on a couple audio projects for some people. All of those projects are still in post-production, but yeah, I would love to do that. I just am very secure in where I am and am not willing to move for something like that. Alex Sheridan asks, how am I doing today? I mentioned this a couple times. I'm doing all right. I was having a really good day until the laptop started on fire. So, yeah. So it's been a little bit of a hectic afternoon/evening, but my son is over at my mom's place, and we have the evening to ourselves. So I decided to hop on a live stream with you guys. Because of the fact that we're doing, or I personally am doing 4 chapters a day now, no matter what, I've had to cut back a little bit on where things are going in the future. I am still working on Keeper of the Lost Cities. That, no matter what, will be the next book that I release or am working on releasing. The only exception being that for Halloween, I'm hoping to have a Goosebumps book out. So if, for whatever reason, I am unable to get Keeper of the Lost Cities done by Halloween, I do have about 30 chapters to go. And it's very unlikely that I'll be able to do 1 chapter a day for Keeper of the Lost Cities. If I'm unable to get it done by Halloween, then there will be a Goosebumps book out. Then it'll be Keeper of the Lost Cities, and then finish Dune and all of those projects like that. Mason Lade says, how long did it take you to get so good at reading aloud? I'm trying to get my brother to do it. It's one of those, like, everybody does it in school, and I was always kind of good at it, for lack of a better phrasing. I was not one of the kids that started when they spoke aloud in school. And I've always had a decent radio voice. So I just decided to start reading a couple years ago for some personal reasons, and got lucky that the Harry Potter audiobook got really big, and then the Percy Jackson books blew up because of the show. And that's kind of where the popularity for the channel came from. So it took about 3 years of practice to get to where I am now. But Disciple of Lord Dionysus says, I got the new Riordanverse book. Me as well. I got it that morning and had it recorded. That's when my laptop started having issues. My screen started short-circuiting, and then it actually, like I said, started on fire today, which should have been a warning, but I thought I could fix it. But yeah, I won't be going through any major spoilers with Court of the Dead. We can talk just kind of some general non-spoilery review stuff. I'm not all the way through it, so I can't give a definitive answer to it. But for you guys hesitant on reading it or curious kind of what it's about, the most I will say without spoiling anything is it feels a lot more like a Percy Jackson book than Sun and the Star did. Sun and the Star was very experimental in its writing style and its narrative style. Court of the Dead is not very similar to Sun and the Star. It's got the same main characters, obviously, but it is written more like a Percy Jackson book. It feels a lot more like Rick Riordan wrote this book by himself, and Mark Oshiro had very little input compared to the way that Mark's work. It felt more like a collaborative effort with the Sun and the Star. And what I'm seeing so far is this feels a lot more like a Percy Jackson book. Mason Lade says, thank you for getting me through my workday. You're a legend. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. I do apologize. My vision is not the best at the moment. Sorry for asking this again, but what is your favorite and least favorite canon ships in Percy Jackson? Good question. Most favorite's probably the easy answer, Perkabath or Percibath, however you guys pronounce it. Simply because it's the one we've known the longest. It's the one that was built up the best. My least favorite, any of Apollo's ships, probably. A lot of them just felt really sudden and quick. There wasn't a lot of build up to them. So I've always felt like the stuff in Trials of Apollo, none of them really made me feel anything. Let's see here. Yes, and Yaffe says, actually, my gaming console almost lit on fire too. It started smoking and steaming. That does seem to be a lot more common with gaming consoles than it does with actual MacBooks. But when I took it in, the guy didn't seem necessarily surprised. I guess it does occasionally happen with short circuits. It's less common that you actually see a flame come out of it. I felt like that episode of iCarly, most episodes of iCarly, because Spencer has the running gimmick where he starts things on fire. That's kind of how it felt. I mentioned the thing about, so Keeper of the Lost Cities, Children of Dune isn't done yet. Diary of a Wimpy Kid book 8, I think. I'm still not done yet. And then just various other projects that I'll be working on. I did just get... We've been talking about the Percy Jackson tangential books, like the Greek gods and Greek heroes. I'm working on those as well as Brooklyn House Magician's Manual. And then I did just get the 2 Magnus Chase ones the other day in the mail. The Guide to the Norse Worlds, as well as 9 from the 9 Worlds. Both of them are readable. What I mean by that is, like, the Percy Jackson Ultimate Guide I will not be reading on the channel, because it's not a readable book. It's more just like a visual guide. Whereas these are both narrative books. Currently listening to Son of Neptune. Great job doing it. Well, thank you very much. Son of Neptune was a lot of fun to do. That's one thing I'm really excited about with Court of the Dead is Frank's back, which means I get to do my Frank voice. Big fan of my Frank voice. Are you excited for the upcoming hockey season? Yes. Cautiously optimistic is a phrase I use a lot about a lot of things, and that's how I'm feeling about the Canucks this year. Yasin Yafi asks, if you could pick any of the books that you've read on your channel before that you're reading currently to reread for fun, which one would it be? Most of the Harry Potter books, I think. just because right now I'm writing with Eric Schwabington. A lot of it is inspired by Harry Potter. Um, and I love the Harry Potter books. And so I think just to get that feel of a magical school, I think I would really like to read them again. I don't want to spend the time recording them again, even though I think I could do a better job than I've already done. If you guys haven't checked out my Harry Potter recordings, they are still available on YouTube. Someone uploaded them to a channel called Echo Worm Harry Potter, if you want to check them out. But yeah, slowly but surely, all of the stuff that is no longer on YouTube, that can be on YouTube, will hopefully come back to YouTube, if that makes any sense. I've had a lot of questions on the channel this week about why I'm forcing everybody to switch over. That was not my choice. That is, if you know the backstory to what happened, I did not strike my own channel, basically. There are certain things that you run a risk of having on YouTube, and sometimes it pays off, sometimes it doesn't. So this channel itself currently does not have any copyrighted content, or at least like actively copyrighted content. All of it is either within the public domain, open to straight fair use, not just interpretable fair use, or is original content that I have created myself. So, like the Eric Schwabington, the Radiation Effect books. The weird thing, I'll tell you this, another weird thing that happened to me this week. It's been a very weird week. My Book of Exodus recording is scheduled for removal due to a copyright strike. It's the Book of Exodus. So the backstory to this is there is this woman in Germany, I believe. She is a Jewish historian, has written like stories about her family's history, whatever. I don't know the entire backstory. I'm kind of paraphrasing here, but basically, a couple years ago, she decided to write a German translation of the Book of Exodus from the Bible that was written 4,000 years ago, if not more. Made a German translation of it, and then added to it and copyrighted it with her own writing, which you can do. You can use fair use content like the Bible and write your own story with that material in it. So she copyrighted her book. Great. What happened, the same thing that's happened with our channel many, many a times, is this third-party company comes in trying to make money off of her by copyright striking someone else's material and selling it to her as a successful copyright strike. And so they go around using her material as an AI basis, and they find my recording of the Book of Exodus, which is it's the Bible, and because it matches something that she has copyrighted in German, now I'm about to get a copyright strike. I will be fighting this one legally. I think that's ridiculous that they even have the possibility of doing that because everything's automated now. But let's see here. Yasin Yafi asks, do you watch football? Yes, I am a Green Bay Packers fan. Unless you're talking about association football, in which case I am a Wickham Wanderers fan. Carlito's Corner says, I've only seen the first Lord of the Rings, but I've only seen the first Lord of the Rings, but loved all three. Hobbit, interesting. That's usually not the feeling that most people have. Would listening to the Lord of the Rings book be a good replacement for watching the films? It depends. I'll say this. They're legendary books. They're very well written books. They are not my style of books. They bore me to death. The reason being that J.R.R. Tolkien's writing style is very expansive. And what I mean by that is at the sacrifice of excitement, to me, everything is drawn out to a significant degree. There are pages upon pages of conversations. There are meals that go on for 2 pages with descriptions. It's not my reading style. But I have a lot of respect for the story and the world building, and I know a lot of people really love the books. I love the films and would far prefer the films to reading the actual books, which I know is a bad take, but John 3:16 says, "Who's suing Abraham?" Yeah, like I said, it's an AI system taking advantage of another AI system to make money off of an author who used fairy. It's a mess, and I will be fighting it legally. Yasin Yafi says, "I'm all home team Ravens." You guys did not look very good the other night. Are you planning to read any J.R.R. Tolkien? Yes. I'm currently working on The Hobbit. It is not a book that we can have on YouTube, but it'll be up on Patreon and Vimeo eventually. I have no idea when I'm going to finish it. That's kind of the case with... You can ask me my timeline for anything, and there really isn't one right now, to be honest with you. I'm doing the best I can. I'm giving you guys 4 chapters a day. If that's not enough for you, I'm sorry. I can't do any more. I can't consistently do any more, I should say. Last night I recorded 8 chapters. How many books do you have in your collection? I think it's over 1,200 at the moment. Like I said, not all of them are behind me. They don't fit in the shelves that I have behind me. Right now they're alphabetized. All the way in the top corner behind this screen that you guys have here is A, all the way down to Z or Z, however you guys say it in your home country. Yasin Yafi says, I love the Ravens, but I feel like sometimes they embarrass themselves. Yeah, I mean, you do have 2 Super Bowls, so you have that going for you, but... I am back to my sponsorship drink, so there's that. Mooney, Taylor, and Nico's version says, have you read all of them? I have not read every single book behind me. I have read most of them. I will not be reading all of them on the channel. I would probably be dead before I get a chance to finish all of them. Who do the Packers play this week? I think they play the Cowboys on Sunday night. So, hoping for a win, but last week the Cleveland game was not very fun. Are you open to spoilers in the Radiation Effect? I think so, because everything's available for everybody. So if you guys want to ask questions about Chapter 2 in Homeland Security, I think I'm more than happy to talk about it. Have you ever read Divine Rivals? I have not. Who is the author in that one? Suzanne William James says, hi, would you consider reading the Warrior Cat series? It's been asked many times. My answer at the moment is, and this could change, my answer at the moment is I do not have plans to read the Warrior Cat series simply because there's so many books in that series. And you could argue there are so many books in the Percy Jackson series too, and I've done the Percy Jackson series. The difficulty for me to commit to something with that many books is the fact that I personally don't have a nostalgic attachment to it. So if it's something that was requested as much as it is now, and continues to be doing so, then I may reconsider doing that. It's just there's a lot of books in that series, and I personally have never read them. So for me, I don't have the nostalgic drive to read them the way that I do for something like Magic Treehouse, which has like 70 books. But I can get all of them, like each book I can do in like an hour. You know what I mean? John 3:16 says, or Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children. No one's ever requested that one, actually. I have read that one. Kylito's Corner says, I saw a couple of good Star Wars videos today by Stupendous Wave. I hope I am reading that correctly. Like I said, my vision is really blurry right now. He puts Maul and Grievous through the hypothetical gauntlet on their chances against all the Jedi High Council of their era. Interesting. I'll have to check that out. I am in fact a Star Wars fan, despite what the last 10 years have tried to do to me. Rebecca Ross is the author of Divine Rivals and the author of Miss Peregrine's. Yes, I'm familiar with Miss Peregrine's. Kalito's Corner says, I've heard that trying to catch up on Warrior Cats would be like trying to catch up on Naruto. There's a lot of books. Yeah, that's my only my two hesitations are long series. I've never read them, and I don't have a personal attachment to them. And there's a lot of other projects that I have on my list. Suzanne William James says, "True, I've got them all." Props to you. Props to you. Mooney says, "Could you read the Whatever After books?" I'm not familiar with those. Who's the author in that series? Yasin Yafi says, "Are you ever going to read Game of Thrones?" I don't remember all the names. Like the first one, Game of Thrones. Yes, I have read the first one. It's available if you check it out. I'm currently working on. In that series. I am currently working on the second book, finishing Fire and Blood. I'm very close to being done with Fire and Blood. I'm hoping to have it done by Christmas. That is the massive 900-page prequel book that House of the Dragon is based off of. I'm currently working on Night of the Seven Kingdoms. A TV show based on that is coming out in the spring. And I'm currently working on the World book, the World of Ice and Fire. So you can find all of that on Patreon and Vimeo. But yes, I've already finished the first book. My sister would read the Ever After series to me when I was younger. Yeah, I've never heard of that. Let me know who the author is. Can you show us your flag collection? I can't at the moment because it's behind the camera and I have some personal stuff over in that direction that I don't really want to put on camera. I do have over 150 different national and state and British county flags. Yes, I collect quite a bit of things. Is your fish tank finished yet? Well, it's finished. There are not fish in it yet. I was doing tests the other day. My pH is currently still too high to be. It's survivable, and it's not super stressful, but it still is not within like the comfort zone for the fish that I want. So I gotta balance the pH out. Otherwise, I believe everything else is in order. The salinity's in order. I have everything should be good for the fish I want. What is your favorite movie? My favorite movie of all time is a 2009 film starring Jared Leto. It is called Mr. Nobody. I understand that Jared Leto is not a very popular actor. I tend to agree with that sentiment, but I don't think his involvement in the film detracts from it at all. It's a very good movie. Mooney says, Sarah, and a Polish last name that I can't read from this far, is the author of those books. I will have to check it out. Speaking of Polish last names, am I ever going to finish The Witcher? Yes. I'm using this as an example. This is not the book that I'm currently reading. This is Blood of Elves. This is the first book in the series. There is also the introductory book, which is like a series of short stories about The Witcher, which takes place before everything. That is called, oh gosh. The Last Wish, sorry. I'm currently working on The Last Wish. Hopefully that will be up in the spring. What is your go-to drink at Starbucks? This is a strawberry acai refresher with lemonade, light ice, and no berries. Suzanne William James says, how about the Wolf Brothers series by Michelle Power? I hope I'm reading that correctly. I have also never read that one. You're very good at bringing me new books. I kind of respect it. Yasin Yafi says, my niece forced me to watch the whole Shrek trilogy 3 times in the past week. Well, not the whole Shrek. Well, there's 4 Shrek movies. And 2... There's technically 6 films in the Shrek universe. Hopefully you've seen them all. Most are decent. Carlito's Corner says, I'm going to attempt to write my own book. I hope to eventually record myself reading each chapter on YouTube. Is there an appropriate place to share it on the Discord server if I wish to do so? Yes, please do. On Discord, I mentioned earlier, the links below aren't working. So if you want to check out the links in our channel description, you just click on the channel and it should have a list of links. There's a Patreon one, a Vimeo one, and a Discord one. Feel free to join the Discord server. And on the Discord server, there should be a channel called Personally Made Stories or something similar to that. Just drop it there. If you can't find it, drop it in the general chat and I'll move it over. That tends to kind of be the trend with a lot of people if they can't find something. But I would love to A, read it, B, listen to you read it. I've mentioned before, and I by no means want to take this off of your plate, but if you guys ever have personal writings that you would want me to read on the channel, I'd absolutely be more than willing to do that. Kylito's Corner says, Puss in Boots, The Last Wish is an amazing movie. Yeah, I personally think that is the, quality-wise, it's not as iconic as the first two Shrek movies, but I think quality-wise, Puss in Boots 2 is probably the best film in that series. If I had to rank quality-wise, this isn't my personal rankings, but like objective, well-made, well-told, well-animated movies in the Shrek series, I personally would go Puss in Boots 2, Shrek 2, Shrek 3, Shrek 4, Puss in Boots 1. I think you could flip the bottom two. Yes, and Yafi says, I forgot about the last one. She doesn't like that one very much. She only makes me watch that one once. Yeah, I didn't really care. I saw the fourth one in theaters. I didn't really care for it. For me, it is about 9:08. I am totally willing to go to about 9:30 if you guys are willing to stick around. Feel free to keep dropping questions or things in the chat if you guys want. How did Wickham become your favorite team? That's a good question. Yeah, if you guys are unaware, so in England, the top soccer league, it's one of the top soccer leagues in the world, is the Premier League, right? So teams like Liverpool and Man United and Man City, Chelsea, Arsenal, Tottenham, everybody kind of knows the Premier League. Wickham play in League One, which is the third tier. So it's basically like, if you think of it in American terms, it's like their double A league. And teams go up and down between the leagues every year. How I became a Wickham fan is I was watching a TV show. I always kind of known about him, and I genuinely didn't know how you pronounced Wickham. Because in the United States, we spell Wickham Wickham. And so I've never seen it spelt the way they do in England. And I was watching a TV show, and I was watching it with subtitles or closed captioning, and the actress said the word Wickham, and it was spelt that way. And I went, oh, I didn't. Anyways, so then I kind of attached myself to the team, started following them a couple years ago, and then my wife and I actually last summer had the opportunity to visit Adams Park, and they gave me a free. I literally just walked up to the front office and asked if I could go into the shop, and the guy was like maybe bored that day, and he literally just gave us a tour of the stadium when no one was there. It was awesome. If any of you are in marketing, that is the best way to make a lifelong fan, is just give them something for free. Kylito's Corner says, do you like the Kung Fu Panda trilogy? 4 doesn't exist. If so, how would you rank those? I have only seen the first 2. I've never seen the third one. The first one came out, I believe, on my 9th birthday, and I saw it the night of the premiere. And I thought it was all right, and I thought the second one was pretty good. So personally, I would go 2-1. I know it's still a while from the World Cup, but if you had a team that you're rooting for right now, who is it? For me, international is always Norway. I'm Norwegian by ethnicity, and fairly passionately follow Norwegian national sports, even before Erling Haaland was kind of the big deal. I've followed Norway hockey and Norway skiing for a long time in the Winter Olympics, and I'm excited now that Norway's soccer team is actually kind of good. So Actually, over in that direction on the wall is a very, very large Norwegian flag that was hand stitched in Norway by one of my relatives. Expogo Sam says, finally got caught up on my Hunger Games lore after watching The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. Surprised to hear it was received with mixed reviews. How do you feel about it? I understand why it was given mixed reviews. I personally, it is one of my favorite books in the series and movies. In fact, excuse me, the movie version of Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes makes me like the book more because I think the film is paced better than the book. The book feels weird because apart from Mockingjay, which I don't like Mockingjay, apart from Mockingjay, it is the only book that doesn't quite end with the Hunger Games. And so you get done with Act 2 of Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, and you're done with the Hunger Games. And for the first time in any of these books, there is still another act after the Hunger Games. And so when you read the book, it feels like there's this really, really long epilogue. And I thought in the film version, they did it a lot better, and it makes me like the book more. But I understand why people didn't really like it. Also, what is in the pot? We know what's in the pot. It's a bamboo stalk. It's not what's in the pot, but the pot is important. For those of you very confused by this conversation, one of my original books is called Homeland Security. It's the second book in the Radiation Effects series. You guys can find it on the channel. Chapter 2 is now available, and there is a running joke within the fandom of 3 people about a pot that appears, a terracotta pot that appears in Chapter 2. And everyone's convinced that it is a Chekhov's device, which may or may not be true. I have not confirmed it yet. Yasin Yafi says, for me it's Morocco. They made it for the so far last time, and I get so upset when they lost. Good news is Morocco's hosting the next one. So home teams tend to do better for the sake of support. We saw that especially in Russia in 2018. Qatar did not a terrible job in 2022, but hosting a World Cup does a lot of things for a national team. Let's see here. Suzanne William James says, saw the photo of your wife wearing a Brighton and Hove Albion football shirt. Have you watched them? My hometown. Little side tangent. So when we went to England last year, we had kind of the choice to either go north or go south and west. And so it was my wife's birthday. That's why we were over in England. And she had never been out of the United States before. And so I kind of gave her the option. I'm like, we could go to Brighton and then over to Dartmoor for your birthday, or we could go up north. And she's a huge Pride and Prejudice fan. So we ended up going up to Derbyshire, which is where they filmed the Pride and Prejudice movie, at Chatsworth House, and we spent her birthday up at Chatsworth House, and it was a lot of fun. But we almost went down to Brighton. My goal next time I go to England is to hit the southern coast, see Portsmouth, see Brighton, see Hampshire. Yeah. Trying to think what else I'm missing. Not Hampshire. What am I trying to say? Anyways, a bunch of those coastal towns, especially Brighton. I have to see the Brighton Pavilion before I die. Is one of the things on my bucket list. So my wife became a Brighton fan because I told her to pick a team by rent, or just pick a team, and she liked the Seagull. So you have that going for you. Kylito's Corner says, I like Eric Schwabington so far, by the way. I'm really interested in learning more about Ganderstorm and the Emperor. Yes. Ganderstorm is the Emperor. If you mean Ganderstorm and the Empire. Yeah, it's actually, so my idea with Eric Schwabington has been, I mentioned this last live stream. Eric Schwabington is a story that I created when I was 6 and have been slowly expanding and making it less a blatant ripoff of Harry Potter and Star Wars in the last 20 years of my life. And it's finally at a point where I'm comfortable writing it and believing that it is absolutely a separate story from what it is originally inspired by. And there are a lot of major plot twists or subversions to the status quo, which, we're through chapter 3. There isn't a lot of status quo there yet for you guys. But to me, as the author, it's interesting knowing, like, I have planned all 7 books out for the radiation effect. I know everything that's going to happen. There are little things that I'm changing and have been inspired by to change, but all of the major plot beats are there and will never change. Eric Schwabington, I went into this series kind of trusting that this is a series that if I wanted it to, it never has to end. Like, I know it'll probably have like an 8 to 10 book first arc, similar to like the Percy Jackson series, and then it'll shift into kind of a next secondary arc, and then a third arc, and then we'll see where it goes from there. But there are a lot of plot twists compared to the radiation effect. And I have a lot of plot twists coming in the radiation effect. Chapter 3 has one of the biggest subversions to the story that you guys will ever see. And I think Sam's going to be really, really pissed when he reads chapter 3, and I'm very happy. But yes, I'm very excited to... I'm working on chapter 4 right now. It'll be the chapter where they actually get to the school. I cannot read that username. I do apologize. If you could change something in Percy Jackson, what would you change? Anything in Percy Jackson? Good question. If I could change anything in Percy Jackson, I would... Oh, my cat's being really loud outside my door. Sorry, everybody. If I could change anything, I would make the Blood of Olympus less boring. Personally, I would make the Blood of Olympus longer, more substantive, and less boring. Because I really think that Blood of Olympus killed the momentum going into Trials of Apollo. Like I said, I apologize if you hear my cat screaming outside the door. She's not screaming in pain, but it's just loud. Let's see here. Reading in the chat. Expogo Sam says, I thought the pot was empty. Morgan is... Sorry. Morgan swole as hell, looking it with a full... I have no idea what you're trying to say, Sam. I'm sorry. Carlito's Corner says, I don't get the Morgan's pot joke. I can't even remember who Chekhov is. I know Chekhov isn't a character, but a historical figure. And Expogo Sam later says, Chekhov's gun is a narrative device where something important is shown blatantly before its use. Yeah, so basically, to expand on that, a Chekhov's gun or a Chekhov's device is any object in a story that is placed in a story that has... The whole point is, if you're an author and you're trying to write a good story, anything you introduce has to be used to its fullest extent at some point. So, for example, the whole point is, I can't remember what book it is, but in the original Chekhov's gun story, there is a gun on the wall. And the whole point being, if the gun is introduced and described and it doesn't get used by the end of the story, there's no point in including it at all. And so for authors, and especially, like, for me, all of my personal Chekhov's guns are lines. Like, every line of dialogue has to have some kind of meaning. Every character interaction has to mean something to the greater whole. It doesn't necessarily have to be revisited later, but it's a waste of page space if I'm just including lines for no reason. It has to do something to the overall whole. So the point being that in this chapter, Morgan is holding a pot. Like a terracotta pot. They're in this greenhouse. Morgan is touching this pot. Why? And that is where this joke comes from. Yasin Yafi says, I don't know if it's just that not that popular, but every time I Google a series or single book Eric Schwabington, I can never find anything about it. That's because I'm writing it. It's not a finished book, and it is my own personal writing project. Suzanne William James says, the pavilion is an amazing place to visit. I need to work in the tea rooms, or I used to work in the tea rooms there. I'm jealous of you. It's a gorgeous, despite despite the backstory to it and the symbolism of it in terms of just flaunting royal wealth, it is, I will say this, the royal family or just any like powerful wealth in general, if it's used for something that is long lasting and symbolic the way that the Brighton Pavilion is, that's awesome. Like, the Brighton Pavilion is very cool. It's a very cool example of money being used for something that will last generations. But yeah, King George IV was a character. He's one of those, like, if you wrote a book about George IV and someone didn't know that he was an actual person, they'd be like, this character's too over the top. No one would ever believe this. Kylido's Corner says, it's funny that you mention that you've been working on Eric Schwabington since you were 6. My idea for my book has gone through so many changes since I was at least in middle school. Yeah, for me, so Radiation Effect for me started when I was probably 12 or 13. And it started as me trying to move on from Eric Schwabington. Like, my entire elementary school years, the story in my head was always Eric Schwabington. And when I got to middle school, I was like, Eric Schwabington can never be as mature as I want it to be. Which isn't true now, but at the time. So I changed it completely. I threw Eric Schwabington away, and I created Johnny Sparks, who, ironically, is not even the main character in The Radiation Effect, at least from my point of view now. Emma has definitely taken over, in my mind, as the main character of that book. But that's where those two stories interact, is Radiation Effect started when I was like 12 or 13 because I wanted to move on from the ideas that I had with Eric Schwabington. And now I'm co-writing both in completely different shapes than they were 10, 15 years ago. Writing is fun. Xpogo Sam says, saying Morgan is strong as hell moving with a full plot. She doesn't move the plant. Reread the chapter. The pot stays put. Yasin Yafi says, so far in Game of Thrones, who is your favorite character? If you mean so far, like I've read every book. I just haven't read it on the channel. My favorite character in the entire series is Cersei Lannister. Cersei is the funniest character in the entire series. She always thinks she's right about everything. And if you guys are into A Song of Ice and Fire content, there's a channel called Quinn the GM. Quinn the GM. And Quinn has a fantastic video about every single time that Cersei was wrong about something in A Feast for Crows. Feast for Crows is the 4th book. Cersei's one of the main characters in that book. And Quinn literally goes through every single time that Cersei is wrong about something. It's hilarious. Kylido's Corner says, if you want information on the Radiation Effect, there is an entire wiki for it. Yes, I have not updated it through book 2 yet, but there is, if you go to irea.fandom.com or just look up IREA wiki or Radiation Effect wiki, you should be able to find it. I do have links on the Discord server if you guys want. Xpogo Sam says, looking into George IV is... Hold on one sec. Looking into George IV to figure out Bill Guerin's legacy arc. No, Bill Guerin is not based on George IV. George IV would not fit into the Radiation Effect. George IV is a very, very... Yeah. If you know anything about the American Revolution... So George III was George IV's dad. And as an American, we kind of, like, our history and the history that we're taught as Americans about the American Revolution is very anti-British in general. And, like, George III is taught to us to be this, like, tyrannical demon king. And from the British perspective, or from, like, a more globalist perspective, it's a lot more complicated than that. And after the revolution, when George III actually, like, legitimately lost his mind, the person who took over as, like, the actual figurehead was his son George IV, and they called him the Prince Regent because he wasn't king yet until his dad died. And that's where we get the term regency from. If you think of like, what's that show everybody likes now that I can't stand? Bridgerton. Bridgerton takes place in Regency, England. So that is the period where George III is still technically the king, but George IV is the head of the country. And so when George IV took over, like everybody spent an obscene amount of money on the dumbest things. And like him personally, like he used to wear the most like outlandish outfits. He used to waste money on these massive buildings so that he didn't have to spend time in London. Yeah, it's very funny to look into. Kylito's Corner says, I don't have much an interest in Game of Thrones, but I do like Peter Dinklage's character and how he schools his bratty nephew. I've seen a few shorts. Yeah, show Tyrion is a lot different than book Tyrion. Book Tyrion, by the end of the series, and what I mean by that is we are through book 5 and have been for the last 14 years. We're still waiting on book 6. Tyrion, by the end of book 5, is the main villain of the series. Like, and we know that because the author has confirmed that. He starts out as kind of this background hero / anti-hero, protagonist kind of. Cersei is more of like the outright villain, the outright antagonist, but by the end of the series, like, Tyrion is not a good person, and he is behind a lot of bad things happening, which doesn't happen in the show. Expogo Sam says, what is a plot point that you wanted to put in the radiation effect but abandoned? That's a really good question. That I abandoned. That's a really good question simply because of the fact that, like, a lot of my original thoughts, or that thoughts that I've had for forever, have not necessarily been abandoned, but have been changed in a lot of ways. I will say this. The character of Riley, Emma's brother, was originally, and I want to be very careful when I say this, was originally not her brother, first and foremost. Riley was a character that when Johnny's interesting because Johnny was kind of where Kent was at the start of the series, where he was kind of the fish out of water character. He was a more obvious protagonist. He was kind of brought into this world and taken into this world. And the first person he met as a part of this company was Emma. And he obviously grew an infatuation with her. But in my original drafts for this story, Emma was dating Riley. Riley was her boyfriend, not her brother. And very early on then, Johnny is wrestling with the fact that he has these feelings for Emma, and he wants to dislike Riley, but Riley is such a likable character that he kind of has to give up his feelings for Emma because Riley, he has no reason to dislike Riley, and they kind of become a group of 3 friends. He tries to leave his feelings of jealousy aside, and then by the end of the first book, Riley ends up dying, and then into book 2 and 3, Johnny is able then to kind of pick up the pieces, if that makes any sense, and slip into that boyfriend role. That has obviously changed significantly. Obviously, Riley is now Emma's brother, but I think the likability of Riley, hopefully, is still there. And the bromance between Johnny and Riley will hopefully also still be there by the end of this book. Let's see here. Yasin Yafi says, for me, it's Bran, because it's Bran. Yeah, Bran is a good character in the books, too. Bran is the first POV character. He will very likely be the last POV character, which is why in the show he becomes the king. Disciple of Lord Dionysus says, so nothing yet. I'm not entirely sure what you're referring to there. Flickstreet Productions says, I'm a little nervous for the new Diary of a Wimpy Kid book, which will focus on Greg's birthday and how it goes badly for him. Did you know that The Last Straw is going to be a film? I did not know that. I don't really keep up with Diary of a Wimpy Kid news the way I would have 15 years ago. I do look every fall for when the new book comes out. I missed the announcement of the new book. I know it is obviously coming. It happens every year. But I did not know that. Very interesting. The Last Straw is an underrated book, in my opinion. I like The Last Straw. Expogo Sam says, with Kent picking up some of Johnny's plot points, and with Riley and Kent building a friendship, seemingly, I see an Emma, Riley, Kent complicated trio inbound. It's a lot more complicated than that. I will say this. It's definitely not a love triangle, obviously, especially with them being siblings. But I've mentioned this before. The dynamics of the different characters in book 2 are going to be fascinating, because we have a group of 6 people, most of whom are keeping secrets from at least one other person in the group. And every other person in the group who either doesn't know about said secret or does know about said secret is trying to maneuver who knows what and how they need to act around whom, and how they may like this person, but this other person doesn't like this person, and so when they're around this person, they can't act in certain... It's going to be It's going to be a mess for me to try to write, and I'm really looking forward to it. But I will say that, like, your Emma, Riley, Kent thing, expand it to a few more characters. I think all 6 of them are going to be in this kind of mess. Carlito's Corner says, Max Verstappen has returned to form, it seems. Yeah, he has looked fantastic the last couple of weeks. Might be little too late for the championship, but it's interesting to see him back in form. Yeah, well, I'll say this. Red Bull as a whole has looked really good the last few weeks. Even Yuki Tsunoda has gone from middle to lower end of the table to higher middle, upper end of the table. Like, feels like a Red Bull driver in the mix. Whatever they've done, whatever Laurent Mekies has changed since he took over, is starting to work. So, we'll see. Yasin Yafi says, I was hoping Kent would be the main character. I really liked his character arc. I won't say that Kent isn't a main character. If there is a second main character to Emma, or one that's even like equal to Emma, I would say the other one is Kent. Very obviously. I think, like I mentioned, Kent has taken a lot of what Johnny's original arc was. A lot of when I started writing and formulating the series when I was in middle and high school, a lot of the vibes, for lack of a better term, that Kent has now, that was Johnny. Galito's Corner says, I liked the joke about misspelling Siobhan's name at the restaurant. Thank you. I had to include it at least once. Sam thinks I should make it a running joke. But yeah, it's one of, like, Siobhan is such a fun name. Like, the reason I am including it at all, and the reason that I got into that name in the first place, comes from the show Orphan Black. It's a Canadian show about clones. I've mentioned it before. It inspired the inclusion of clones in the radiation effect. But one of the main characters in that show, her name is Siobhan. And in the show, there is not necessarily a gag, but she spells her name for somebody. And I went, huh? And so ever since that moment, it's just been one of those names, the same as Saoirse, like Saoirse Ronan, one of those Irish female names that just stands out because they're so different compared to how, as English speakers, we would spell things. Flick Street Production says the new Wimpy Kid book will be called Party Pooper. Interesting. What color is I haven't looked it up. Maybe I should look it up real quick. Brewers lost. I don't care. They have the best record in baseball. Party Pooper, Diary of a Wimpy Kid. Pink? Interesting. I don't know if you guys can see it this far on my phone. But it's basically pink frosting is the texture of this. Very interesting. That is the 20th book. Let's see here. Forget love triangles. We're going to have triangular prisms. Yeah, it'll be... Well, especially with Kent's gay arc now, then it's going to be... I maintain Kent is the main character. I've never said he's not necessarily. I think I write the series as if Emma is the main character, if that makes any sense. Yasin Yafi says, if you could have picked anything to change in the radiation effect, what would it be? Well, there's still time, because it's not a published book necessarily. Oh, if I could change anything about the first book... Maybe one more Liz chapter. I think 3 is kind of the magic number. And that's dangerous, because like if you give a character 3, then like something's gonna happen. You know what I mean? Like 3 is kind of that magic number of everything happens in threes. Sorry, I'm reading something further in the chat. If I had to change anything, it's a good question. I really like that Liz's death comes without any romantic... She kisses him, right? I wish for her sake she would have been able to kind of explore that romantic angle with Kent. It couldn't happen. For the sake of every other character in the series, for the sake of the plot, it couldn't happen. But for her sake, I wish that she could have had that, because she died not knowing that her feelings were reciprocated. Her last act was saving the boy that she had feelings for. Yeah, it's there's not a lot I would change, to be honest with you. Like, I'm very, very proud of it. Which may be my undoing, because when an editor tells me I have to change something, I'm going to be really stubborn about it. Why am I just now finding out you watch F1? I just rewatched rewatched Rush today. What a spectacular movie. Yeah, I'm a fairly big Mercedes fan, actually. I don't know if you guys can see it over here. Here, I'll put it right behind me. There you go. George Russell is now over my head. Carlito's Corner says, when I see the many things that have been taken from Kent, it kind of breaks my heart, because it just adds to his disdain for Johnny. Yeah, there's a line at the start of chapter 2 where he basically... it's a fun... Kent's feelings towards Johnny are interesting, and I hope that I'm pacing them well. Because my first draft of this story, and there's a chapter coming up in book 2 that I have actually written before, and will be rewriting. But one of the things that when I wrote it the first time, I was like, all right, I added this. Now I have to somehow get Kent's feelings to mean something when he says these words. And he says something in this upcoming chapter to Johnny that is scalding. And, like, it doesn't surprise Johnny. Like, Johnny's just like, yeah, I know you have these feelings toward me. Cut it out. Like we have bigger things to deal with. But yeah, the whole point being, Kent is someone who, despite having a chance at a very successful life, like his dad is a billionaire. He's never met his dad. But like, despite all the things going for him, everything works against him. Whereas Johnny, you know, he's had tragedy in his life, but he's kind of the golden boy of the series. And I think, like, for me personally, that is why he's not the main character anymore. Is because if I were writing things from his perspective, it'd be boring. I am still writing from his perspective, but if he was like the outright main character, him telling the story of his own success, I think, would be terribly boring. Everything goes right for Johnny. Like, people are trying to protect him. He's got more powers than anybody else. Like, Johnny is... The universe love, like, God favors Johnny, and Kent is jealous of it. And the dynamic between that is going to go some really cool places. really sad places. And that's all I'll say about that. Flick Street Productions says, if you could choose a previous period to to set one of your future novels, which would you like to? Like the Roaring 20s, 1940s, or even publication era, or Prohibition era, sorry. I can't read today, my apologies. Well, okay, so I'll say this. I don't have any stories that I have in my head or am actively writing that take place in the past. There are a couple exceptions to that. There are some anthology, like reworked histories, but none are set in a specific era. They're all kind of, it doesn't really make sense as I'm explaining them. But it would be more like a Fire and Blood, where it's a retelling of history with a skin on it, with new characters, that expands a great amount of time, not just a single period. That being said, I have talked before about adding an 8th book to the Radiation Effect, which is told from the single perspective of Bill Guerin, and that would have to take place in the late 80s. Bill Guerin was born in 1970, according to the timeline of the Radiation Effect as it stands. So it would probably take place in the late 80s, which the 80s, I'm not a nostalgic person for the 80s, the way like a lot of people do, the way a lot of pop culture is. But to tell the story I want to tell, that's where I would set it. I personally like setting stories into the future, not for the sake of technology, but for the sake of it doesn't really bind you to world events. And that's something that, for me, with the Radiation Effect being set in the past, is a challenge, but is something I'm doing on purpose. I'm writing about high schoolers in the period of time that I went to high school. So the things that they're experiencing in terms of like the world around them is what I know. I don't think I'd be able to set a story in the modern day because this is 10 years removed from when I was in high school. Does that make any sense? So I don't know. I don't really think about the past that much. Xpogo Sam says, inspired the inclusion of clones in the Radiation Effect. Chat, clip it. He's confirmed it. Yeah, you'll have to clip that and add it to there's a chat channel over on Discord if you want to do that with the pink comment too. Do you think you'll narrate your Harry Potter essay at some point? Good question. I need to finish my Harry Potter essay to begin with. I mentioned last live stream. I'm glad I remember saying that. Otherwise, I'd have no idea what you're talking about. But yeah, I did work on a Harry Potter essay about Christian allegories. And if I ever finish it, yes, I would love to record it for the channel. I have a lot of other projects that I'm prioritizing first. Xpogo Sam says, still dying for a Liz short story. It'll come eventually, but between the 2 books that I'm writing, between the fact that I have a full-time job, between the fact that I have a wife and children, and the fact that I'm trying to get a whole bunch of audiobooks done for you guys, my schedule is packed. I'll say this. So my laptop started on fire this afternoon, and I spent 5 hours without access to a computer other than my phone. And I had no idea what to do with myself. I sat down to play PlayStation, and I did not know what to do. I have lost the ability to have free time. It's really sad, but I am constantly working to the point where I no longer know how to relax and have time to myself. On that happy note, Kylito's Corner says, you gave your reasons for not being a NASCAR fan, which are understandable, but what about IndyCar? Just doesn't interest you? Sidebar. I'm sad Roman Grosjean couldn't find success in IndyCar. Well, he's back in F1, kind of. Yeah, I don't know. When it comes to sports that, to me, are international, I don't like when they are simply Americanized. And what I mean by that is I'll watch the MLS, but it's so less to me than the Premier League or than the Bundesliga or even like something like Serie A, which I'm not a huge fan of Serie A in its current form. But my point being, if a sport exists in an international version, which to me like F1 is, it is hard for me to watch a sport like that when it is simply Americanized. Which is why, like, yeah, I don't know. I don't really care for NASCAR that much. I don't really care for. I have never really got into IndyCar because I like the international culture of F1 more, if that makes any sense. Xpogo Sam says, Johnny fails upward, Kent has successful downward thus far. Has succeeded downward thus far. Yeah, that's where that dynamic between Johnny and Kent's characters is headed in very opposite directions, and Kent is going to fight like hell for it not to. Yasin Yafi says, I want to start writing my own books. It's just I don't really know if my writing styles mixed well, because the way that I kind of think when I'm writing is Brandon Mull, Rick Riordan, and J.K. Rowling. Just, my advice would be this. Write. And that is a really, really stupid, like, obvious answer. But I will say, like, read a lot and write a lot. And what will happen is the different styles that influence you will combine in a way that is entirely you. And I personally feel that with my writing styles. My issue right now is trying to separate my writing styles, because The Radiation Effect is a story meant for an adult audience, and Eric Schwabington is not. And so for me, it is, for lack of a better term, dumbing down my writing to fit Eric Schwabington. And once I'm in that headspace for Eric Schwabington, moving it back to a mature audience for The Radiation Effect. So just figure out what your personal writing style is and use those influences to tell the story you want to tell. It's better said than done. Easier said than done, I should say. Did your wife enjoy the Hunger Games? For the ladies' book series, I think the last one is way too gruesome, but the author did a good job of dreaming young women from deterring young women from a revolution. I don't know, like my wife, yeah, I think my wife likes the Hunger Games. My wife does not read the stuff that I read. Like, she had never really read Percy Jackson, and then we watched the TV show, and she liked the TV show. But, like, my wife is so much more the stereotypical female romantic kind of... I mentioned earlier, like, her favorite movie is Pride and Prejudice. She loves, like, cheesy sitcoms from the 2000s. She wants me to read Twilight on the channel. So in terms of, like... She didn't like Divergent, but she loves Twilight. I don't know what that says about her. Fails upward may be incorrect, but like Johnny gets off so easy in so many ways. He has everything going for him. The truth of why has not really been revealed. Yasin Yafi says, you said you play video games. Which games do you enjoy? Not in me saying that I play video games, I was trying to make the point that I don't know how to play video games to enjoy myself. I play sports video games because I like sports, and I play Call of Duty because I grew up playing Call of Duty. Beyond that, I don't play video games. Like, I follow the Game Awards simply to see what is popular, but I've never played Baldur's Gate. I've never played Elden Ring. I have never played Astro Bot. I have no idea what any of these games are. I'm just consciously aware of them, but I have really never played anything beyond what's like seriously popular, like a Grand Theft Auto or a Red Dead Redemption or that sort of thing. You made me listen to The Radiation Effect just to find out what happened to your friend. Hope your friend is doing well. Yes, my friend is doing well. Sorry, took me a second to realize what that meant. Yes, my friend is doing all right. Great support system around him. Flick Street Productions. Do you believe that the Regency era and the mid to late 1800s eras are being constantly overused in fiction? Yes, I do. Especially romantic fiction. Absolutely. It definitely feels like it, and it's a little graining to me. Yeah, so I'm a Doctor Who fan, and it's been a meme for over a decade that Doctor Who is constantly visiting the Victorian era, which is absolutely true. And they have started moving away from that, and the replacement, ironically, has been the Regency era. Yes, I believe that there is a romanticization in specifically British culture of the 1800s, which is understandable but interesting. And the backstory to that being that the Regency era allows people to put themselves into a time period that things were good for a specific group of people, which in most of British history has not been the case. Like if you look at British history or the history of Britain from the perspective of like the common person, it is not a good history. And so having worn out the Victorian era, I think that you either look to the realism of the 20th century from British history, which is not necessarily the best to look at because there's a lot of violence there, there's a lot of negative aspects to it, and the most recent that you can get with a period that is surface level romantic to look at is that Regency era. Just writing is very good advice. I sometimes have to remind myself that I'm not, insert author here, I'm me. Tell the story that you want to tell, just put in the effort. It's taken me 15 years to do what I do, and I still struggle to sit down and just write. And so it's the best advice I can give. Like someone like Stephen King, for example, has the advice of like, you should be writing a chapter a day or however many pages a day. And if you're not, then you're not an author. Great, whatever. But like, there's a difference between writing a lot and writing well. I think a lot of people can justify. And you have to figure out how to write, and you will have days where like you can't write. And that's art in general. Are you curious in post-apocalyptic literature? If yes, could you recommend any? Also, are you planning to read them on your channel besides The Maze Runner? So it depends what you mean by post-apocalyptic. That can go in a lot of different directions. Technically, something like Game of Thrones is post-apocalyptic because it takes place after an apocalyptic event. But it's more so a fantasy mystery novel. Maze Runner is the most obvious post-apocalyptic event. Hunger Games is another one. Divergent is another one. Trying to think if there are others that I would recommend or that I have really enjoyed. One could argue that like the Shadow Children series is post-apocalyptic. It's not really an apocalypse necessarily, but it's a significant change from the status quo in a way that is negative to the main characters. One that I would recommend, and let me see if it's behind me. It's a little too far for me to reach. It's way over in that corner. If you guys are familiar with the book No Country for Old Men, or the movie No Country for Old Men, it's by an author named Cormac McCarthy. And Cormac McCarthy is a very, very dark and dreary author, like very depressing author. And one of his other stories, which is a film, and actually the reason I know about it is because of the film, came out, I don't know how many years ago. It stars Viggo Mortensen and a very, very young, is it Jamie Campbell Boyer? It might be someone else. It probably came out 15, 20 years ago. It's called The Road. Basically what happens is there's this apocalyptic event. It's very similar to The Last of Us, except there's no zombies. But the storyline is very similar. It's a dad and his son, and they have to kind of wander this post-apocalyptic world. It's very, very dark. It's very, very depressing, but it's a very, very good book. And if I were to pick one to read on the channel, it would probably be that one. Let's see here. I got the... Sorry. Oh! I got the Road book recently. Have you read it? There you go. Answer the question. I didn't even read that. I'm assuming we're talking about the same one. Yasin Yafi says, this is a little bit random, but I don't really have any more questions. So if a zombie apocalypse were to start, what would be the very first thing you'd do besides help your family and friends? That is a good question. I actually think about that often, not necessarily the zombie part of it. My town that I live in is very, very hilly. And we just moved to the north side of town, which is often seen as the more secure part of town, kind of stereotypically. But it's because most of the northern side of town sits on the top of these hills. And so, like, I grew up in the south. I grew up very, very privileged as it was, but I did grow up on a floodplain. And so often what I think about apocalyptically is, like, now that I'm on the north side of town, I don't have to worry about this natural disaster or this event happening or this threat happening or whatever. And so, like, my first thing is figuring out how I would be able to secure my home in the event of something like that happening. I don't know that I could. My house isn't necessarily large enough or in a neighborhood enough to, like, wall it. But it would probably be figuring out where I'd get my supplies or where I could hold down that would be secure. I have keys to the local ice rink. I could probably lock myself in there. Flick Street Productions says, another thing about the Regency era and the late 1800s being overused is that too many stories in those era are almost always set in London or New York. Yes, I completely agree. That has been an issue with Doctor Who for years. I don't know. I don't know where my thoughts were going on that, but yes, I completely agree. Overused. Kylito's Corner uses other examples, Fallout and The Walking Dead. Yeah. Fallout doesn't have a book series that I know about, and The Walking Dead is a graphic novel series, which would be very, very hard, unless... So, for example, The Walking Dead, Volume 1, Days Gone by Robert Kirkman and Tony Moore. This is how hard it would be for me to narrate a graphic novel. Gasp. In this frame, he is sitting up. In this frame, he is getting to his feet. In this frame, he starts walking. He falls. Nurse! He presses the nurse button. You know what? Like, you can't narrate graphic novels. It's impossible. It's a comic book. The amount of people who have asked if I can, like, do certain graphic novels, like, how would you do them? How would you narrate a graphic novel? Especially if you wanted to have the artwork. If you want my channel to get taken down for copyright even faster, then you put copyrighted images from comic books. Oh my gosh, we've been going a lot longer than I thought we would. Is it really already? It is already 10 o'clock. Wow. All right, well, if you guys have any more questions, feel free to ask them in the chat. Otherwise, I think I will wrap this up. I do have to record at least 4 chapters tonight, and I would like to start writing continue writing chapter 3 of the Radiation Effect book 2. So, if I don't see anything pop up, I do want to give one more shout out to my patrons, but I can't show them because of the tech issues that I'm having. Flickstreet Productions says, maybe I'm a little lost, but Five Nights at Freddy's is getting a book series is confusing. I understand it's a video game and a movie. Yeah, it's a video game with a lot of lore. And this does tend to happen. I'm trying to think of another good example of a video game with a book series to follow. I can't think of any off the top of my head. But yeah, so Five Nights at Freddy's has always been a series that has a lot going on in the background, and people have taken advantage of that because of the audience of Five Nights at Freddy's and expanded it and expanded the lore into novels. And that's where the film kind of stems from too. Five Nights at Freddy's is kind of a really unique thing in terms of video games. Yasin Yafi says, I don't know what I would do. I would just stock up on food and sufficient weapons. If you count like 80 knives from a collection, that's not a bad start. All right, I think with that, I'm going to call it. My voice is starting to get a little tired, and like I said, I do still have a lot of work to do tonight. So hopefully we'll see you guys in about 2 weeks. Otherwise, join the Discord server if you want to continue these conversations. There's a link in the channel bio. Check out everything full form over on Patreon and Vimeo. It's all free. Otherwise, we'll see you next time.